Hi there, another update on my shop system for Buildbox 3. So let me show you the demo first and what features I added. So here at the top, I have categories, and this was actually possible in the previous version as well, but I decided to add this in the demo. And you can do this by using the group option. I'll show you a little bit later. Now in the previous version, you could only purchase using coins. And in this version, I added ability of purchasing with points as well. This green icon right here is points. And also I added ability for custom purchase. And you can use that custom for in-app purchases. Like right here, I have $1.99 for this character. So you can click on this character and now we purchase that character. Now you can see that there's duplicates of items, and I just did it so that I have a longer list, because I wanted to demo the ability that I added for scrolling. You can scroll the grid. In fact, I merged the grid list and the horizontal list together, so you can use the same setup and you can switch it to horizontal or vertical scrolling to make things a little bit simpler. So this is how scrolling works right now. Now we can't really purchase these at this point because we need currency. So we can go under currency, and in here, these are another setting that I added. So these are not selectable. These objects are selectable. So when you select it, you can see that it blinks that you have selected that character. But these you can use to purchase multiple times. So if we want some coins, we can purchase this. And here we have the ability to purchase this character now. And you can do that. Now you can purchase that character. Same thing for points. We can purchase some points, and we can purchase this character that costs that much points. You can also use that custom feature to give the ability of watching ads to receive coins, and I'll show that in Buildbox. Now here I also have a demo for background, so you can use the same thing to switch the background, whatever you want, choose your character, and then you can click play, and it goes into your game. I have an invisible reset button right here, so if I click the corner right there, it resets all my settings. So if I go back to the shop, everything is back to original. And the reason I did that was to show one more fix that I did. So in the previous version, it was impossible to have the object and the slot to be on the different levels. That is fixed now. So you can have the slot underneath and the label still being over the objects. So that is one fix that I did. You might have noticed that I'm running this game in Windows Build, and it's more stable running it in a build than in Buildbox preview. So let's go into Buildbox now and check out the setup. So this is the mind map of the demo, and the setup that I have right here is just an empty world. So menu 3D world. There is no characters here. And right here, I have the 3D world for the game itself. And this is the world that I used in the previous demos. I have not changed anything with the character selector and the node selector, so those are working exactly the same. There wasn't any features that I thought of adding to those nodes, so they are unchanged. Now, one quick tip, if you're using an asset manager to add your character to the world, one thing you can do is add a 3D model of your default character here and disconnect it. That way, when you place the asset manager, you can actually see where the character is going to spawn. Also, common mistake is having the asset manager inside of the character list, and you don't want to do that. It will mess up how the camera follows the character. So one thing I added to this world is the background, and that's the support for changing the background color. So for the background, I used the node selector, and right here, you can see that the store group is actually switched to BG, which is another group than what I use for the asset manager. The asset manager is store group character. And that's what I mentioned before in the previous releases, that you could have used this store group to have different store groups and create multiple things that you can purchase in your game. So that's just a quick tips and the setup that I did for the background in the 3D world. But most of the changes were done in the UI. So right here, I have 3 different UIs. And that's for the different categories that I have. So here's the character category, the currency category, and the background category. And all of them look almost exactly the same. The only difference is it changes which one is currently selected right here at the top. and the settings for the grid list is changing. So I have pinned some of the options for the grid list. So the position limiter smooth, that's what you can use to limit how far you can scroll your list. If you're scrolling in the Y direction, you'd configure the Y settings. If you're scrolling in the X direction, you would configure the X. Otherwise, you would have them set to none. Also right here, the other options are the ID list of the items you want to display. And you can see that I have duplicates right here to have a longer list for demo. So you can specify which items you want to display in this grid. And also you can use the asset prefix to specify what's the asset names. So right here I have item, space, and those are going to be these right here, item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, and item 5. After that, I have currency 1, currency 2, currency 3. That's what I use for the currency category. So right here, if you select the grid in the currency shop UI, you can see that I changed the position limiter to be 14.5, 14.5, because the list is small. So I want to limit the position to be at one spot. In the grid view settings, what I have is item IDs 1, 2, 3. And the asset prefix is currency. And that's right here, currency 1, currency 2, currency 3. Same thing for the background. The position limiter is also at one spot. And for the IDs, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the asset prefix is background. So that's how you can create multiple categories in your shop. And it keeps everything clean and labeled correctly. So that's the UI screen setup and how you can configure that. Now let's take a look at the updates that I did to nodes. Like I mentioned, I didn't do anything to the node selector and asset selector. Those are exactly the same as in version 35. And also these is touched and touch move. I've also have not touched it since the version 35. So that's the same. The loop breaker is also the same. And here are 3 of new nodes that I added. So this one, keep on 4. All it does is when you trigger the turn on, it sends out true from the control. And after the time runs out, it sends out false. I used a delay with a state machine before, and it was used for blinking the green or the red, depends if you successfully purchased or you failed to purchase. So I decided to create a custom node to get rid of some of the extra nodes. The position limiter smooth is the modified position limiter that Buildbox provides. The modification that I did was to create that smooth effect. So instead of having a hard limit, it allows you to go past and then it bounces back. That's the smooth effect that I added to it. And another node is hide off screen. So right here, that node is responsible for hiding those slots. Whenever they exceed the boundary limits, they start scaling down and then they just disappear. If you want to remove that scale down effect, you can decrease the transition distance to 0. So if I go to item slot and find that node, hide off screen. If I set it to 0 here, refresh it, and now you can see it just disappears once it's out of bounds. And if I have a transition distance, then it actually scales it down. So those are the options that are there. You can use whatever you prefer. But the hide off screen, it is inside the item slot. So you just have to configure it in one spot. So that's 3 of the new nodes. Now right here, I have the grid view. And for the grid view, what I did is combined both functionalities from the grid list and the horizontal list. If you want your grid to be in horizontal, you can switch that. And now you have the option of specifying how many rows you have in your horizontal list. So for instance, if I go to my UI, open up my grid view, inside here, I have the grid view node, and I can switch it to horizontal, and let's say 2 rows, refresh that. And now you can see that I have 2 rows, but you can still see that I'm scrolling vertically. So if you want to switch scrolling in the horizontal, you can go to the touch move. And for the sensitivity, instead of in the Y direction, you set it to 0 for Y and set it to 1.5 into the X direction. Now you can scroll horizontally. So that's how you can switch the view to be scrolled from vertical to horizontal. Let's switch it back to vertical. 3, 0, 1.5. Refresh. So the calculation for how they are spaced out are directly dependent on how you stretch the grid list. So that's what I'm looking for. So if I'm currently in the vertical and I selected I want 3 columns, if I squish this grid list something like this, and then if I refresh it, you can see that it tries to fit into this space right here. So I don't know if I mentioned that before, but that's how it works. And it works the same way in the horizontal. If you're in horizontal mode, the size of how you stretch the grid list vertically will change the spacing between the items in the rows. So that's the changes that I did to the grid view. Then I also created another new node called branch. So this node right here, it works specifically with the connections right here. So you have to use one of those connections for the branch. And I'll show you in a little bit what it's used for. So the last 2 nodes that I have are these 2 right here, the item and item slot. If you already have a project that uses my shop system and you want to upgrade to this one, the nodes that you'll need to switch, these 2. So everywhere where you use the item slot, you need to replace it with a new one. And also everywhere where you use the item node, you need to replace with the new one. The other node that you need to replace is the horizontal or the grid list with a new grid view node. So let's go and take a look at the item slot, what changes I did here. So in the item slot, I have the hide off screen. So if you don't want to hide your objects when they're off screen, you can remove this node and the functionality will disappear with that. Now inside here, everything is pretty much the same except these 2 connections right here. Is points and is custom. So because I added ability of supporting points, you need to choose which currency you want to display. So right here, I have the coins, then I have the points, and the custom, I have the $sign, which in my case stands for in-app purchases. And because of these options, I need to switch between which one I need to display. And that's where the branch comes in. So in the previous version, I just used a state machine that was connected to the coin. And that was pretty much it. Now in this version, I have to switch between 3 types, and the branch node that I created allows me to do that. Now how the branch node works is whenever I need to display the currency, it goes into the first branch and checks the value. So it actually uses the request functionality that Buildbox has, which isn't used that much, but I decided to use it in here. And it requests the value to check if this item that is currently displaying is a custom item or not. If it is a custom item, then it sends out a signal to the true connection, which turns on the custom animation. If it's false, it goes to the second branch, which checks the value for if it's a point or not. If it's a point, it displays a point. If it's not a point, then it displays the coin. So that's how the branch works and what functionality it does in here. Everything else is set up the same way as the previous version, but there was a lot of rework inside of item slot code. So that's why if you're upgrading your project to the new version, you need to switch the item slot as well. If you're still just using coins in your game, you don't have to add these is points or is custom and the branches. You still can have the same setup as you had previously, just connect to the coins and ignore the branches. But if you want to add the functionality of the points and custom, then this is the setup that you'll need to go with. So that's it with the item slot. Now let's take a look at the items. So for the item 1, you can see that nothing has changed here. It's exactly as it was previously. The 3 options that were added was the points boolean, custom boolean, and not selectable boolean. So that's the 3 options that I added. Also, I added the failed to buy, just bought, and custom purchase connection outputs, and a purchase done connection input. The custom purchase and purchase done is only for the custom purchasing, but the failed to buy and just bought, I just decided to also add them here as well, because I have them in the item slot. But in case if you ever want to do something custom here, you can always do that. So right here, I have the item 3 that uses the points. So let's take a look at the difference in the setup for that. So in here, the only thing that I changed here was I checked that it's points. If I don't have it set to points, it will be treated as coins. And you can see right here, just by turning off this check mark, it changes from coins to points. So that's the change there. Now let's take a look at the item 4. So this is the item 4 right here. And in here, I have custom checked on. And it actually doesn't matter if you have points turned on or turned off. It still will be the same. If you have custom on, it has the priority over points and coins. So that setting is not important. And here is the implementation of the custom purchase. So whenever the item is clicked, then this custom purchase will actually be triggered. And here you can connect the purchase node that is provided by Buildbox to make your in-app purchase. Of course, you need to test and make sure that the purchase works exactly like you expected, so there wouldn't be any mistakes here. After a successful purchase, then you trigger the purchase done, which sets the item as purchased. So right here, like when I clicked, it went through the purchase and set it as purchased. So that's a custom setup right here. Now under currency, I have another set of different purchases, and let's go take a look at those. So under currency 1, I have a label that displays that 10,000, which is how many coins you're going to get when you purchase this. And for the item node, I have the custom checked. And also I have the not selectable checked as well. And this what allows it to be purchased multiple times. Process of custom purchase is exactly the same. So it goes into the purchase node that is provided by Buildbox. And after purchase is successful, then you trigger the purchase done. When the purchase done is triggered, the item triggers the just bought output, which you can use to add the points. And right here, I have the add point node, which is also provided by Buildbox. And the amount is 10,000. And for point coins option, I have it set to coins. Similar for the points, except you have it set to points here, but the process is the same. And the very last option is watching the ad. And in here, I use a rewarded video. To test the rewards for a rewarded video, you need to actually test it on your phone. In the preview, it always triggers the no ad option, so it's not going to work in the preview. But when the rewarded video is watched successfully, you get the reward output, which triggers the purchase done. And then you can use the just bought event that triggers the add point. And in here, you specify 500. Now, one tricky setup about this watch ad. Since watch ad is actually free, for price, if you put 0, it will not display the number, and it also doesn't display the currency icon. So that's the trick that you can use and set it to custom and also not selectable. And for this watch ad, or you can either use the label just like I did here. I have a label watched ad here, or you can have an icon that is placed right here. So that's it. That's pretty much all the changes and improvements that I did. The background is exactly the same as character, so there isn't any difference there. It just uses the store group. So for the characters, we use character, and for the background items, we use BG. So if you didn't get this shop system yet, you can get it on itch.io. There's a link in description. I hope you guys like these updates that I did, and hopefully this shop will make your games just a little bit better.